Welcome to the Amner Martinez podcast, a Des Moines, Iowa local-centric podcast. Since 2019, I've had the privilege and honor to speak with local politicians, chefs, musicians, athletes, authors, and more. In the 2025 season, we want you to walk away from this podcast knowing our local people in a different light and seeing them from different angles than you're used to. So stick around for interesting conversations. So I have Katie Roth here. You're a well-recognized person here in the Des Moines business community.
I don't know about that, Amner.
We met like 4 years ago or something like that. Mm-hmm. And you gave me some business, so kind. That's when I first started to, and this dream of like being a business owner. So if you're a business owner and you have you want any tips on sales or being a business owner, you've sold your business too?
Yes.
You've done marketing?
Yes.
All of it. So this could be a very valuable informational tips.
Well, you know this, Amner. Sometimes as a business owner, you have to take out the trash too. So.
Yes. So, and you've been in recruiting and staffing for...
Wow, 38 years because I was just pregnant. I just found out I was pregnant with my son. I had just was hired as a branch manager for a national staffing firm that unfortunately is no longer around. But I was just hired by them. And 5 months later, I'd been married a couple of years, and husband and I decided that we were going to try to have a baby. And we got pregnant right away, and I felt terrible because I thought, this is terrible to do this to my relatively new employer I'm going to be on a maternity leave. But he was wonderful. He had 5 children. He goes, "You are coming back, aren't you?" And I said, yes. So anyway, my son is 38, so that's how long I've really been in some sort of staffing.
You've seen it evolve into
this. It's crazy.
So where are we in recruiting? Some people tell me
recruiting is tough right now. The market's gotten soft, okay? AI is really starting to play a large role in as far as companies with hiring, which I think is on one hand good, but on the other hand I think is not good. I've said this a long time. We need to put the human back in human resources.
Yes.
And that's not happening yet. So I think a lot of times you have to apply online, you get an automated response, AI may screen and give you the top 25 resumes that they feel, according to their algorithms, are the best person for the job. But it might have been the 99th person that applied for the job that really is the most qualified for the job, and they never even get a chance because they either show up on page 99 and the human resource recruiter only calls the first 10 people or the first 15 people. And so you really almost have to treat it like a sales job.
Right.
And a lot of people call me and they're frustrated about not being able to find work. And, one of the things I always recommend to them right away is, use your LinkedIn connections and go find people within that company.
Talk to a recruiter, talk to a connector.
And you need to find somebody in that organization that can walk up and put your resume on preferably the hiring manager's desk, not necessarily HR. HR wouldn't be happy to hear me say that. And say, listen, you probably should talk to this person.
Yeah.
And then the hiring manager goes into HR and says, I want to talk to this person.
Yeah, I think AI is like the latest thing that has come about, right? But there's been this like digital wall that's been created between job seeker and hiring manager that it makes it easy for the hiring person because, technology has been making it easy for them, but you lose so much talent in between that process, right?
You really do. I really feel you do, Amner, because, and I agree, it has made staffing a lot easier. You probably know this as well. But I think COVID really had a big effect on people trying to apply for jobs. Because even now, trying to find somebody at their desk, even with selling, I think is difficult. And a lot of times if you called during the day, you got their voicemail, you'd have to leave a message. Even if you could find a phone number within the company of somebody to call. So I think it's, I even recommend sometimes applying for a job after you've applied for the job online. You actually, dress nicely, actually go up to the company and leave your resume at the front desk
So
with you.
you're saying go back to the basics, go back to
almost kind of a cold calling thing and say, hey, I did apply online, but I just wanted to drop off my resume. If you'd be willing to give it to the HR manager or the hiring manager, I'd really appreciate it. Now, you can't do that if you're applying for a remote job in Chicago or whatever.
Yeah.
But if you're, this is a relationship town.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes when you're polite and you look nice and you're well dressed and you drop your resume off, what's it going to hurt? First off, if you're looking for a job, you've got time on your hands. But the other thing I tell candidates is, man, looking for a job is almost a full-time job.
Yeah.
It takes, you need to spend a couple hours a day looking for jobs, looking on websites, looking at companies, following companies, getting out there. And, if you're working full time already and you've got a young family and then you got to spend 3 or 4 hours a night looking for a job, it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work.
And I think a lot of, on the other side, clients are looking for people the people that they're looking for are already working.
Right. Well, and that's what for most of my career, I was, a headhunter, recruiter. And, when I would prospect now in my career, fortunately, I just get referrals usually. But, a client would say, well, why do I need a headhunter? And I'd say, because the person you're looking for is not looking for you.
Yes,
okay?
Yeah.
They got their head down. They're doing strong work. They're not out on Career Builder and Monster.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times that's where you're going to find candidates who job hop and, are in their positions not very long. So,
yeah. And that's kind of one of the things that, CEOs or people that are hiring is they need to understand that, yes, they're not looking. So what we do is, we convert non-lookers into lookers.
Yeah, right.
How do you go about that? Like, do you do that most often, or mostly people are just kind of like coming to you?
Well, back in the day when I had to sell, and I had a staff that would have to sell, you had to be proactive. Selling is a numbers game. You have to build a relationship. Most salespeople give up after 2 or 3 calls. Most contacts with somebody is going to result after 8 contacts with the person. Now that could be leaving a voicemail, that could be dropping something off at their office, that could be forwarding something of interest to the client or the prospect. But I think unfortunately most salespeople give up. And I think a lot of times...
I give up after the first one.
Handling rejection... way before I was in staffing, I was a stockbroker for 3 years. Now they're called wealth managers or whatever, but back then we were stockbrokers. And you talk about rejection. I mean, it was like people would hang. Back then you would just use the phone book to look up people who had dresses in nice neighborhoods and call them up on the phone. And people would yell at you and scream at you and use foul language.
Yeah.
But it was great, Amner, because I really got immune to rejection. And then when I went to work for this temporary help company, it was kind of like, almost everybody used temps. So it was easy. And if they didn't use me today, they might use me later or whatever. So,
So why 8? Why that specific number?
8, I don't know. They've just done studies. And they find that most salespeople have to try 8 times before they get into a prospect. It used to be 3 to 5, but I think because of COVID, it's longer now because of the fact that a lot of people are working from home. They're harder to reach. It's harder to find their information. So I think that's why it's 8 now versus 4 to 5, maybe 6 in the old days.
Yeah.
When you could go and knock on doors. Back when I started in temporary help, I could actually go out and knock on doors and there wasn't security guards everywhere. And
I know. Nowadays it's like you gotta sign up and get a badge and before you're inside, you're in a lobby and then another lobby.
Well, and then one time I was calling downtown and it was, I can't remember, it was a security guard at the front desk, and I knew they were not going to let me in, okay? So I had some information I wanted to leave, and I knew the woman's name was Catherine. And I said to the security guard, I said, does she go by Kathy or Catherine? I just want to leave her a little note. And he looked at me, he goes, I can't tell you that information. And I almost said, because then you'd have to kill me, right? I mean, it was like a lot of them are kind of infused with self-importance. But
do you think that is sales and recruiting are entangled?
Absolutely.
It's like one thing.
Absolutely. Well, Amner, you own a staffing agency. You have two sets of clients. You've got your employees, and you've got your clients.
Yeah.
So you have to sell the employees on the position, and you have to sell the clients on using you as an agency.
Yeah.
And in the old days, Yonkers, which a lot of your listeners probably don't even know Yonkers anymore, but they had a big clothing warehouse up in Ankeny, and they used a lot of contingent workers.
That.
Yeah, oh, do you?
Yeah.
Okay, they used a lot of contingent workers. And I'd call people up and say, hey, would you need a job? And, they go, Ankeny? I don't want to drive up to Ankeny. And I'm kind of like, well, how badly do you want to work? Type situation. But you got to sell both sides.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's a little bit different because if you're selling pencils, you only have to talk to the purchasing agent. But you and I, we have to talk to the candidate and we have to talk to the client.
And educate the client too.
Right,
Sometimes some clients, they think they need somebody, but then you realize, no, you need 3 people.
Yeah. I always love it too.
Why is that? Why is it that some companies think that they want like three-headed monster,
Well, and I think, sometimes, they want
save money.
A lot of times they'll give you the job description, this, and so, let's say there's 10 things on the job description. So you give them a person that's got all 10 things, and they're like, well, they don't have this and that. And you're like, well, you didn't tell me that. And,
yeah.
And then a lot of times when people, if they said, well, they don't have all the qualifications, then I would say, well, how much more do you want to pay for somebody to have all the qualifications?
Yes.
Or if you don't want to pay more, what 2 or 3 things can you live without? So
you say that to you?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
When you get to be my age, Amner, you could say about anything you want.
Okay. I mean, I'm very comfortable with my clients because I think they trust you, right? Like
yes.
There's a trust.
Yes.
I've told my client, I'm like, you hire me. Like I'm telling you, you need to meet this person.
Yes.
And then they meet him, and they're like, yep, like, and they hire them.
Right.
So there is once you get comfortable with some expertise, like what you're talking about, like that like you got to trust me on this one.
Yeah. And you have to build a relationship, and once you have the trust in the relationship, and then you're right when you call them up and say, listen, I really like this person for a variety of reasons. I think you ought to spend the time to sit down.
Sometimes
with them.
the paper doesn't like fully.
No, and that's why they hire us.
Yeah.
They hire us because if I just want to send a resume, what value am I?
Right.
I'm not providing value to the client if I'm just, they can go on Career Builder and get resumes.
Yeah.
But it's digging deeper. And also I find, Amner, and I know you know this, but a lot of people don't know how to write a good resume.
Yeah.
And they don't highlight the right things. And also I think a lot of times people are afraid to brag about themselves.
True.
And, the resume is the opportunity for you to brag about yourself.
Right. Sometimes you talk to people and you're like, oh, this is not, what you've told me is not reflecting on this.
Right.
So let's work on this first.
Right.
To get you in the door.
And then the other thing, Amner, and you know this as well, a lot of people lie on their resumes.
Yeah.
So
you got to catch
it's kind of our job
to
our job to figure out where they might not be telling the whole truth.
What do you think the biggest misconception is from like the client standpoint, the company, the hiring party, like of recruiting agencies?
I think, unfortunately, sometimes they've been burned, okay? There's a lot of recruiters that throw resumes against a wall like spaghetti and hope something sticks rather than really sending people who are qualified for the position, okay?
Yeah.
I think sometimes with HR people, they think, well, I should be hiring people and I shouldn't. The CEO is looking at me like, okay, well, I can't find somebody, so I got to pay an outside recruiter to go find somebody.
Yeah.
Okay, so sometimes I think the HR person might be a little bit reticent. And it's not that, HR does really a good job. And you know what, Amner, everybody's doing more with less. People are cutting back.
Yeah.
But I think that's one of the reasons why is because a lot of times, not every HR department, but a lot of times HR departments just look at the resumes that are submitted rather than proactively going out and finding these people. And you were talking about, you said it earlier, the person you're looking for is not looking for you.
Right.
And that is work.
Yeah.
It's work to find those people, make sure that they're qualified for the job. You have to reach out to them.
Right.
You have to dangle the job in front of them.
Yeah.
And I always will laugh.
And you do that times 20.
Yes.
To
50,
find one person.
100. Statistically, I think I went to a sales training in Kansas City, and he was like, man, you have to reach 100 people to get maybe 20 people who will talk to you about a position, to get maybe 10 people to send you the resume, to where you submit 2 or 3 people. I mean, again, it's a numbers game,
Yeah. And I think a lot of this is for like business owners and CEOs or VPs, like HR, and this is my personal opinion. An HR person is not a recruiter. They don't think like recruiters, right?
Right.
That's not a bad thing. That's just it's just the way it is.
Typically, HR recruiters do not go out and do what we do, okay?
Yeah.
Because they can't handle the rejection. They don't really know how to recruit. And also, I'm sure you found this, back when I had a big staff, technically, if they worked for me for 2 years, most of them were able to go into a larger organization and start recruiting. And they always found jobs because they knew how to recruit quickly and quality people. But yeah, I think HR people are... they're there to protect the company. They're there to make sure that the rules are being enforced.
Job.
It is. It's a different. Recruiting is different than what I think human resources. I mean, it's part of human resources, absolutely, because you have to have employees. But a great HR person, if they're doing a great job on recruiting, can bring a lot of value to the organization. Because if you don't have employees, you're not getting stuff done.
Right.
So,
but some do get threatened by recruiting agencies.
Oh, I think so. Yeah.
Especially like recruiters too.
Yeah, I think so.
Talent acquisitions. They're like, well, but I don't think we're there to replace. I think we're just there to like.
It's the supplement.
Like complement what you're doing. We'll just give you an extension. Yeah. Do you think we're going to be needed, though? I mean, with AI and, like now, there was a wave of companies creating their own recruiting talent acquisition teams.
Yes.
I think that we are because, like, there's this human aspect that is technology can't do it, and you require experience to, like, identify talent.
Well,
right.
And, AI is great, and I think it's very, very important, and I think there'll be a role to it, absolutely. But again, I think the human touch, and also over time, we've seen things come and go. Life is cyclical. There's always going to be something newer and better, and, that type of thing. And so I just can't see AI replacing us.
Yeah.
It might help screen. It might make our jobs easier if we embrace it. If we embrace AI as far as screening and that type of thing. But I just always think you need that relationship and the personal, human touch.
And maybe you can speak on this a little bit. You talk to a lot of talent that are like very talented, but they're like. They've reached a point of their career that they're like, I need to go a different direction. No matter how much money they're making, they are ready to move because of like culture or, personnel, their boss, but somehow they're ready. And I don't think AI can read that, right? Like, and they're not willing to tell that to just anybody.
Right.
And I think that's where we come in and we kind of like start to discuss because they're open more to us what they want to do, what they don't want to do, why they want to leave.
Right.
So I don't think AI can do that, or even like a rookie beginning recruiter can do that.
No, I don't. Yeah, rookie recruiters need a lot of training.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because I do get calls, people who 50, 55 years old. And they go, man, I just can't do this anymore. And so you've got to be able to, and it's doable. It's going to take them a while to change careers. If they're going to change in a vertical market, it's going to take a while. Now, accounting's easy because those skills are kind of transferable. Every company needs a good accounting type person or whatever. But a lot of times people, they have transferable skills, but somebody's got to help them figure out how to take those transferable skills and tell them how to apply it to another employer. And also, sometimes too, Amner, they call me up and they go, well, I want to do something different. And I'm like, well, can you afford to take a cut in pay?
Yes. a lot of people are not ready for that, or they don't even know that they have to do that. Like,
Right.
well, you're not going to make the same money.
Right. You're not going to make the same amount of money if you end up at a nonprofit or you end up at a job where basically, a lot of times people, the reason you get paid a lot of money is because you end up taking your job home with you every night. And you worry about it, and you're in charge, and you've got lots of responsibility, and that's why you get paid.
Yeah.
But if you just want an 8 to 5 job, it's going to be a little bit different monetarily wise.
Yes. But you're happier.
Yeah, but you're happier. And I've known many people that have. They've gone to work for nonprofits. They've started different businesses, and they're doing things, that are enjoyable, and it's doable. It's just like, what kind of sacrifices are you willing to make?
Yeah. At some point, though, it becomes like, because I've seen people that they get stuck on like those big corporate companies, and they 10, 15 years, and then at some point they're like, no, I don't care. Like, I'm ready. So money doesn't buy us the happiness that we think.
Well, money, yeah.
It does, right?
Yeah.
In the long run, I've seen people that they're willing to that's fine. Just help me.
Well, and I talked to a woman once,
here.
and she was at a company a long time, and she was absolutely miserable. And I said, well, why don't you go work someplace else? And she was like, well, I get 5 weeks of vacation. And I was like, there's no job to me where I am
gonna give you 5 weeks.
Well, and what kind of job where what's it worth to wake up being miserable and dreading to go to work every day? I mean, I've been so blessed in that every day I got up and looked forward to going into work. And to not look forward to going into work, even if you get 5 weeks vacation, to be miserable the other 47 weeks of the year.
Yes.
I just don't get that.
Yeah.
But you know what?
You got to be willing to, because I think they do that, right? Like, they do that on purpose. The corporations, let's give them 21 days of PTO, 5 weeks vacation, and and then you're like, well, how do I leave?
They can't. And I've talked to a lot of people over the years, and they're just too well compensated. They're miserable, but they're just too well compensated to leave.
Yeah.
Or you fall in the trap where now you got 2 homes and a boat.
Yeah.
And
2 homes and a boat.
Yeah.
Then how do you?
And your monthly nut is really big, and but. Those are the choices we make in life, Amner.
Right.
So.
How have you been able to adapt, like, in the sales department? Because that's one thing that like me and my sales director, we're like always thinking of like, what are we doing? Can we do something different? Does this work? Does this not work? What's your advice on sales?
That's a really important question, because I think sales has changed tremendously since COVID, okay? Because of the fact that, you kind of saw this where now you have the security guards everywhere. In the old days, I could just walk into a plant and walk up to the plant manager's office. Well, now everybody's got a swipe card. But I think a couple things is you have to set yourself up as an expert in your field. I think you have to consistently keep in touch with your prospects and your clients, via email, a phone call occasionally, drop something in snail mail. In the old days, we used to drop off donuts in a coffee mug and say, we know you're busy, but take a coffee break on Olston today. That was effective. A lot of times, what I would really try to do when I first met my prospects is really find out about them. And I think a lot of salespeople show up and they just talk all over the prospect, and they don't ask enough questions.
I see.
They're pushing brochures instead of trying to develop that relationship and ask a lot of questions. There's a couple of great books out there. When I had years ago, I used a business coach, and he said you really need to touch a prospect at least 10 times a month. That's a lot, Amner. I mean, that's kind of twice a week, which I thought was enough, a lot. But if you touched your prospect 4 times a week, and you want to be, this is one of my favorite phrases, pleasantly persistent without being overly obnoxious.
Okay. Pleasantly persistent without being
overly obnoxious, okay?
Such a fine line.
It really is. And there were times I crossed it, okay? But having that consistent contact with them. And I remember years ago, and this was many, many years ago, there was a large insurance company in town that I knew used a ton of temporary contingent workers from one of my competitors. Okay. And once a month I would go down there. Again, this was when you could go down and walk into a building, so things have changed. But I would drop off some information, and sometimes she would come out and talk to me. Sometimes she wouldn't. Say, Katie, I'm tied up. I'd be, that's fine. And it was always the first thing I did because I called it eating the frog. Eating the frog is doing the one thing that you don't want to do first thing in the morning so that you get it done with and then the rest of your day's good. Okay?
I see. Eating the frog.
I've never eaten a frog, but I bet they don't taste very good unless they're sauteed in butter or something like that, okay? So, fried. So, I don't know, maybe a year. I can't remember the time frame exactly, maybe 18 months. So I'm sitting at my desk and the phone rings. And it's the contact, and she says, "Well, I want to talk to you about giving you our business." And I was like, "Okay, that's great. So let's set up a meeting."
Yeah.
So we set up a meeting, and the reason she called me was two things. First off, this other staffing firm had fired their branch manager, and they had loved this guy, this guy. So they were mad at this other agency, and at the end of the conversation with her, I said, I don't understand why you called me. I said, isn't every agency in town knocking on your door?
Yeah.
And she said, no, you were the one that consistently showed up no matter what.
Yeah.
And so we got the business, became our biggest client. Persistent without being overly obnoxious. And sometimes it doesn't always have to be business related. In the old days, I would find out, especially with the guys, what their favorite football or baseball team was. And if I saw something fun or interesting about that, I'd copy it or drop it off and just say, hey, I know you follow the St. Louis Cardinals. Here's an interesting article about, Ozzie Smith, type situation. And starting to build that relationship with them that's just not based on business alone. And I think that's gotten harder too.
Yeah.
But I think the thing of it is you have to let people know that you're always going to be there. And I think that's why a lot of times, like in insurance and financial services, those people turn over so constantly, and it's hard for them to get business because they think, well, are you going to really be here in a year?
Right.
So... but you own your own company, so that's an advantage.
Yeah.
But,
Okay.
But we did a lot of education. HR people need continuing education credits, Amner. And so we used to do a lot of seminars and webinars, and now you can do them on Zoom, where you can apply to be authorized as a provider of continuing education credits. And so we would do a lot of that. We were also... I was very active in our Society for Human Resource Managers.
That would put you in front of
right,
HR
right.
managers.
And I would go to the meetings and I would volunteer for committees. And, we do the trade shows, although I'm sure you agree with me. I just hate doing trade shows.
Yeah, it's like having
a necessary evil. Yeah.
It's like a necessary evil,
It's like if you don't do them, you're conspicuous by your absence, but you're standing there all day hoping somebody will come over and talk to you. Unless you're giving away something really fun.
Yeah. People love free stuff.
I know.
So it's just staying in front of people and doing like a little bit of everything.
I think so. I think you have to do 4 or 5 things a month and set yourself up. Years and years ago, my first roommate, I went to Mizzou my first year, and then I transferred up to Iowa. And my roommate was a very good student. And she said one day, and I was not a very good student.
Same.
Matter of fact, I think my dad said at my end of Mizzou, and he saw my grades, it was like, I'm not sure I'm going to pay for this anymore. So, she said, I said, well, I just kind of struggling. And part of it is I don't think I really knew how to study. But she said, Katie, you don't have to do that much more to set yourself that far ahead of the pack. And I said, what do you mean? And she goes, well, technically, really, I'm only a B+ student, which wasn't true. But anyway, but she said, I sit in the front of the class. I check out the materials from the library on the suggested reading list. I hold those in my arm when I go up and talk to the teacher's assistant. I get to know the teacher's assistant. I get to know the instructor. I ask questions. And she said, I always felt like when they were going to give a grade, if it was a difference between a B+ or an A-, I got the benefit of the doubt and I get the A-.
I see.
And it's just None of that cost any money, Amner.
Right.
None
It's
of it.
just her created a relationship.
Just sitting in front of the class, getting to know the instructor, checking out the books, asking questions, being engaged, versus the kid that sits in the back and can't wait to leave at the end of the lecture period. And I started doing that, and first off, I started studying too. Okay, that helped. Okay, but I started doing that, and then I really adapted that in my sales career because I just don't think it's that hard to set yourself apart from the competition.
I see. Just a little extra effort here.
A birthday card.
Stay consistent.
I'm thinking of you. I've gone to clients' parents' funerals.
Yeah.
You know, and some of those people are my best friends today.
Yeah.
You know, so.
So we shouldn't think about it way too much, right? Like we shouldn't think about it too much of, because sometimes we do find ourselves just kind of like, what do we do?
I know.
Because like technology is kind of like, creeping in or not creeping in, like it's already here. We're in the future right now.
It's here.
I mean, ChatGPT blows your mind.
Yeah. Oh, it's crazy.
It's insane.
I mean, Amner, if you think about when I started 38 years ago versus now, I mean, in the old days, we had this thing called an invaluable, and it was this big, tall steel cabinet, and it had all these drawers, and in each drawer you pulled it out. Okay, so you pulled out your data entry card, and then there were stacks. There were people that just all these data entry people, and when somebody called and said, "I need a data entry clerk," which now they wouldn't say that, you'd have to go down and it was color coded and all this. Technology really changed our industry.
Right.
But yeah, it's. I think you just have to, you can't sell always on price. You got to sell on quality and relationships, and you got to sell on value. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of people don't do that anymore.
And just kind of to touch a little bit about, there's so many industries in between job seeker and hiring manager, right? Like there's technology, there's staffing agencies, there's
website, the staffing,
now it's like CRMs, like the softwares to maintain your staff, and payroll companies.
And a lot of people have really, in the old days it was, Manpower and Kelly and Robert Half and Ulston, which, as I mentioned, I started my career with, and they're no longer in business. But those companies were really tough to sell against. And but then I'll never forget one time the company Ulston that I work for came out with a lot of evaluations to test people on their speed on their typing and Excel and Word and those types of things. And I kind of assumed everybody had those. And I found out, no, it was just us. We were kind of the leader in it. And I wasn't promoting that enough. I mean, that was a real value add back then, to be able to test how fast somebody could type versus, not using a regular, Selectric typewriter that I went away with when I went to college. So
there's a lot of businesses in there that you've also been a business owner. You've sold your business in the past.
Yes.
You've been a leader. So what's the best advice you can give? Or let's start with this one. What's the biggest mistake a leader can make?
Oh, gosh. I made so many mistakes, Amner. Some days I wondered if the lights were still going to be on when I walked in the office. A couple of things have stood out in my mind. One time, one of my workers said to me, "We don't celebrate our successes enough." And I think it was because I was always we got to do more business. We got to do more business. We got to do more business. And taking time to celebrate your successes. And I think sometimes, too, companies don't. A lot of people who have worked for me over the years, I don't know if they understood how important their job was. I think sometimes in organizations, every job is so critical to the overall functioning of the organization, and employees don't know why that is. Why being a great data entry operator is important. One time there was I was listening to a consultant, and he was talking about, he was a consultant for a big hospital, the CEOs, and he was getting a cup of coffee, and the guy behind him was getting a cup of coffee, and they just started chatting, and he goes, so what do you do here? Are you a surgeon? And the guy says, no, actually, I'm a janitor. And he goes, oh, a janitor. He goes, and the guy said, but I have one of the most important jobs in the hospital because if I don't clean properly, staff could run through this hospital and kill people overnight. If somebody had taken the time to help him understand
that's right.
why his job, doing his job well and thoroughly and taking pride in his job was so important. And I think sometimes I miss the boat on that. I think sometimes, too, if you're going to sell your business, you have to start thinking in a 3 to 5 year time frame. You can't just wake up and go, okay, I'm going to sell my business.
I see.
You need to really step back and think, okay, if I want to be, you're still a young man, okay, but someday you may want to sell your business. So do you want to do an ESOP? Do you want to sell it to one of your employees? Do you want to be gobbled up by a big company? Okay. You need to, do I want to just make a ton of money and hire a hired gun to run my business and have it as a lifestyle business? Those are decisions that you can't just start thinking about, I think, when you're 65. I think you need to start thinking about those even where you are right now.
Sure,
okay?
sooner. If I want to sell, I need to start thinking, I'm going to sell 3 years from now.
3 to 5 years from now.
Oh, okay.
Or it may only be 10 years from. I mean, it may be, you may be thinking, okay, Katie, I don't want to sell my business till I'm 65. Well, at 55, you better start thinking about how you're going to go about that.
I see.
Are all your ducks in a row? Is your accounting clean?
Right.
All those things that an employer's going to, a prospective buyer's going to look at. And sometimes those things take time to get in order, if that makes sense.
When you were selling your it was a staffing agency too.
Yes, correct.
Yeah. Did they approach you or you approached them?
It was kind of a long story. I was working for Merit Resources and kind of had a falling out with my 2 partners. I was a partner there. And so I went, actually there I was selling human resource outsourcing. And so I went back into staffing and started my own firm. And those 2 people eventually left, and the new president came in and kind of really became a friend. And he called me up one day and he said, hey, Katie, I heard a lot about you. I don't know how. I said, well, obviously. He said, I've heard a lot of good things about you. And I said, well, obviously, you haven't talked to enough people. You need to talk to more people. And, and so we started this friendship, and this was probably, I was 58 maybe. And he said, hey, if you ever want to sell, would you let us know? Because we could use a staffing component to the HR business that I had been with in the previous company. And I turned 60. I didn't have any kids in the business. I'm diverging now, but, I don't know. I think sometimes when you're a business owner and you come home every night and you complain about your job and all the challenges you have, none of your kids want to work for you.
Yeah.
But they all took their own separate paths and they're all doing really well. But I was 60. I had no kids in the business. So I ended up selling and going back to work for basically what was then Merit Resources. Then it became REN. And so anyway, it was, it was a lot. It took 5 or 6 months to get it done just because
okay.
they're going to look at your books. You're going to get attorneys involved.
So
you're going to have
it kind
CPAs.
of presented itself.
Yeah. So that I was really lucky it presented itself. I did own a business back in the 90s, and it got flooded, and we ended up selling that. So that was interesting. Again, accountants, attorneys. So
you don't know what's going to happen, right?
You don't. Well, I guess you should know what happened, but I guess I just could. My business coach, I loved him. He was really good. Sometimes, I don't know if you work with a business coach or not, but a business coach sometimes helps you. Sometimes as a business owner, it's tough to read the label from inside the bottle. Okay. Okay. And I think a business coach kind of helps you step outside that.
Yeah.
And so he said, okay, Katie, what are you going to do next year? I'm just going to throw out a figure. I said, well, okay, I'm going to do $10 million next year. And he would go, okay, well, how much of that is temporary help? How much of that is your margin? How much of that is direct hire? How much staff are you going to need? And I was like, well, I don't know. I'm just going to do $10 million next year. You really can't do that, Amner. You really.
I see.
You really should plan your work and work your plan. And I think a lot of business owners, well, not a lot of business owners, maybe just me, sometimes just kind of fly by the seat of the pants. And you mentioned sometimes mistakes. Early in my career, I bought cheap software, okay, because I was worried about money, okay, And I ended up changing software, I think 3 times to finally the software that I got that I
see.
really loved. And I would have been changing software is tough.
It's tough.
It's
Yeah,
tough.
yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah,
change. It's learning a new system.
months.
It takes months. And I wish then I had just actually invested in the software that I ended
the
up with,
right
which
software,
is the
yeah.
software that I referred to you guys.
Yes.
But, I think sometimes with software you get what you pay for. And it would have been worth it for me to really spend the time and energy and spend the money on the
right
resources.
software.
Yeah.
Sometimes we want to think we're saving money, but we're actually like doubling our costs.
You know what, Amner, it's really true. Sometimes you're stepping over dollars to pick up pennies, and it's not a good thing. So.
What's the best advice that you've ever gotten?
Oh gosh, certainly the advice from my freshman, my roommate at Iowa, who said, you don't have to do that much more to put yourself ahead of the pack. Other advice, I think, don't give up. I think as a business owner, sometimes you're lonely. You can't talk to your employees and share your anxiety or your worries or whatever. I think good advice is, another mistake I made was not really having a good internal accountant. I mean, I have an outside accountant for taxes and the big stuff, but having a really, really good bookkeeper to stay on top of receivables and that kind of thing. But I guess the advice was, if you do what you love, the money will follow usually, or the satisfaction will follow.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think I was just focused too much on the everyday stuff rather than looking at the big picture. And that's a good. I'll have to think more about that. The best advice I ever got. Don't treat your business as a hobby. It's not a hobby. It's a business, which I thought was good advice. But
I think I might sometimes, it felt that way a little bit a couple of years ago, especially with like the podcast production company, Amplified. A lot of questions were getting raised, like, well, is this going to be a hobby? Because it's costing.
Hobbies usually cost you money. They don't. They're not revenue producers.
Yeah. So that's a great advice. Like, don't treat your business
as a hobby.
as a hobby.
It's a business. Okay.
Yeah. I can keep you here on and on and on.
Yes, I think we're up.
And I know we already booked another conversation for the future, but what is your, like, let's end it with this one.
Okay.
Let's see what is like a life motto that you have?
That's a wonderful question, Amner. I think it's changed a little bit over time. Okay. When you're raising children, your life motto might be a little bit different. Now that I'm kind of really very, very close to retirement, I want to have a full life for the rest of my 15 years. If women on average die at 84, I might have 15, 16 years. Now, unfortunately, I probably live to be 100 and be strapped in a nursing home someplace, okay? But because I'm very lucky. But I want to have a spiritual life. My spirituality is very important to me. My health is important to me. My relationship with my children. I have a passel of grandchildren now. My children, I want to be there for them. I have spent a lot of time the last couple of months thinking about, if I have a legacy to leave, what will that legacy look like? Because when I was younger, accolades were really important to me. Being honored was really important to me. And as I got older and some of those honors came, it was kind of like, it's not a big deal.
Right. Yeah.
It was really great that I got them and I was very honored. But that wasn't as important to me anymore as it was when I was 30 or 35, and like, man, if I was on the cover of the business record, I really would have arrived, type situation,
Yeah.
And when I was, it was kind of like, this is nice, and I appreciate it, but that wasn't as important to me as it was when I was younger. But I was, wrapped up in my career and, raising a family and that kind of thing, and you don't want to forget the little stuff and want to focus on what's important in your life.
Yeah, you invited me. You were kind enough to invite me to a gathering where it's business and faith cross, right? And so that's kind of like the path that, or the what you're mentioning right now is living life in a more meaningful way, spiritually. And I guess it can be done in your work too, right? Like I think people
absolutely.
separate the being a good human with only doing it outside of work. Because work is just like work.
I know. You just get so focused on it, but I agree, Amner. And you talk about. I always tried to take care of my employees.
Mm-hmm.
I always wanted them to be able to go get a better job. I would always want them to. I said, if you come work for me for a couple years, then and you're ready to move on, I will help you. Okay,
yes.
If you've given me a couple good years, because I know the end all isn't working for my teeny tiny little staffing firm.
Yeah.
And but I wish I had celebrated more successes with my employees. I wish I'd spent more time with my children when they were younger. That time, you never get that time back. But again, I was focused on, it's so easy to get focused on your business when you're driven like you and I are. I was very driven.
Yeah.
And, but now I'm at the point in my life where I can, my grandparents and grandchildren get along so well.
Oh, no way.
Because they have an enemy in common. So. Anyway.
Well, let's leave it at that for now.
Okay.
I thank you for trusting me 4 or 5 years ago with a client of yours that needed help on the area that we're experts in, and I have the luxury to call you somebody that I know, and we've been kind of getting more acquainted in the last few years. So I look forward to more meetings and more conversations with you. So thank you again, and we'll see everybody next time.
Thank you, Amner. Really appreciate it.